And it's another one for the European Union. Thanks to them, AIs are going to have to start watermarking all of their outputs. From the same people who brought you that annoying mandatory cookie warning on every single website. In another case of surveillance mislabeled as transparency, they want the AIs to give everyone full knowledge of who's been doing deepfakes of them and hurting their little fifis. The new regulations apply to AI-generated text, image, and audio. So Anthropic rolled out invisible watermarking on all text generated with Claude starting on the 2nd. And how do they do that, you ask? By manipulating the output tokens so that their numeric equivalents conform to their watermarking key. In other words, they actually rephrase the text and even computer code they give you. It'll actually be different than it would be without the watermarking. No hidden text, no invisible characters, no extra tokens. It actually rephrases them in a way that makes a watermark. Which means that, despite what anyone says, its output will not be the optimum that the model would otherwise give you. It's as though Anthropic is putting their own little bug logo in the corner of everything you do. And it even applies to text you give Claude to proofread or rephrase. Folks, this is me going on record. This is a bad idea. The idea is to make this hard to remove with editing. You can't just change a word or two and foil the watermarking. But the only way that can work is to lower the statistical confidence. Even Anthropic admits that this cannot and will not ever have 100% confidence even when the text is unedited. The more the user alters the text, the more you need to lower the confidence to detect it. Which means the more you want to account for the user editing the text, the greater your chance of a false positive. More innocent people falsely accused of using AI, leading to them being expelled, fired, rejected, or otherwise disciplined, even if you only used Claude for proofreading. And once you have these systems in place in the name of transparency, you can enable filtering of writing you think is AI assisted. Transparency leads to filtering. Filtering leads to censorship. And censorship leads to a stagnant society. It's also a form of tracking and an enabler of surveillance. It's a complete paper trail that can ultimately track anyone you talk with, exchange data with, work with, whatever. All it would take is for one person in that chain to do a bit of editing or rewriting with Claude, and everyone is exposed. I hear the anti-AI screechers now, but I need to catch XYZ people using AI. And those are the very people you won't be able to catch, because they'll have moved on to open source models that don't do this kind of crap. Or they'll start spoofing campaigns to forge the mark onto non-AI text, which will be easy because we know the algo they use, Google's Synth ID. And for honest people, it'll be a scarlet letter on even the most innocuous and perfectly justified uses of AI. However well-intentioned this might be, the implementation of imperceptible, always-on, model-level marking throughout the output represents yet another abrogation of user autonomy in favor of corporate and regulatory surveillance. It threatens privacy, it threatens individual autonomy, and it threatens to increase the divide between the political class and those who find themselves increasingly ground under their jackboots. If it were a good idea, they wouldn't have to force Anthropic to do it by law. They could just convince them. But that's not how authoritarians work. They believe that their subjective opinion is the one true objective fact, and they'll do anything they can to force anyone else to comply. Hear it from Anthropic themselves, quote, "We're implementing watermarking to comply with the EU AI Act. This requires AI system providers to use methods of marking AI-generated text. We're applying watermarking globally at launch because we don't yet have a durable way to scope it by region." And that's what the EU does. They deliberately write their regulations in such a way that it's hard to regionalize them, making it easier to just implement it worldwide. Which is the only reason anyone outside the EU gets those stupid, useless, annoying cookie warnings. It's in the name of making the law harder for EU residents to bypass, but it really just lets them implement their stupidity worldwide, which they otherwise would absolutely not have the authority to do. It's so well known it has a name: the Brussels effect. That's the fact of it, folks. They know exactly what they're doing. Hanlon's razor doesn't apply here. The EU authorities aren't stupid. They are actually evil.